Hey everybody, my name is John, and welcome back to week 3 of labs. This week we're going to be working on some food chemistry. You may want to pause the video for a second to read the instructions, but jumping right into it. First thing we're going to do is mix together our sugar, brown sugar, butter, vanilla, and eggs into a mixing bowl. And with your eggs and butter, you want to try to keep them at a room temperature, so you may want to let them sit out for a few minutes before. Also, you may want to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. For these set of cookies here, I melted my butter down. The next thing we're going to do here is slowly add in our flour and start to mix that together. You can also mix this with the baking soda and salt at the same time, or if you just want to add the flour and then the other ones, just make sure you add the salt little by little and keep stirring it up as you add it. So the next thing we're going to be doing with our dough is adding in our chocolate chips. You can sprinkle these on and then try to fold it over into itself, but you want to try to get the chocolate chips inside of the dough. The last thing we're going to be doing with our dough is grab a teaspoon, and we're going to be scooping out little balls of dough and then rolling them up and laying them on our pan. We want to place them about 2 inches apart so that they have room to spread out and adequately move. And we want to make them about a teaspoon size, no more or no less. If they're a little bit bigger than that, they may not cook evenly and the outsides may be a little bit more brown than the insides. And if they're too small, the whole cookie may be a lot more brown than you may want it to be. We can go ahead and pull our cookies out between 8 and 10 minutes after we put them in the oven. I took about 8 minutes because mine were on the bottom rack, so they may cook a bit faster if they're there. Now we can jump into a little bit about the food chemistry. The first reaction that we can see is the butter melting at around 92 degrees Fahrenheit, and this will spread out the dough, which you may have seen at the halfway point. The butter is emulsified in between fat and water, and this means that they are just mixed together, and they typically don't mix together very well. Still at the 92 degree mark, the water that was emulsified between the butter and the fat is released, and this phase changes into steam, which then rises and then pushes up from the dough on the inside, which creates some pockets and bubbles of air, which explains a little bit of the fluffiness that you'll see. I'll explain a little bit more about this chemistry later, but now we can jump into our second lab, which is our sugar cookies. Jumping into the sugar cookies, the first thing you're going to want to do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Then you're going to want to mix all the dry ingredients together except for sugar in a mixing bowl. Next thing you're going to want to do is get a separate bowl and throw in your butter and your sugar and then cream these together until it gets fluffy. You may notice my recipe at this point looks a little small, but that's because I halved it. Now you want to take a third mixing bowl and put in your egg and your vanilla and almond extracts. From here, you want to whisk these together and then add it into your mixture of butter and sugar. Once you have these two mixed together, you can go ahead and then add it into your big flour mixture and then whisk and mix those all together into one dough. Just like the chocolate chip cookies, you want to get your dough and roll them up into balls, teaspoon size. Place them about 2 inches apart on your pan, and then put them into the oven for about 10 minutes. However, with these ones, you do want to flatten them with a glass in particular. This will help them cook a little bit more evenly. Jumping back into some chemistry now, we talked about how at 92 degrees Fahrenheit, the butter spreads and melts throughout the dough and is emulsified. Next, we'll go into the 144 degrees Fahrenheit level. This is when the proteins inside of the eggs change, they tangle within themselves, and this becomes more tangible and overall just gives the egg more substance. At around 212 degrees Fahrenheit, this is when the cookie flattens out and stiffens up a little bit. The pockets of steam are released at this point, and it gives airiness and flakiness throughout the cookie. At the same time this is going on, the baking soda, which is the leavening agent in this recipe, reacts with many different acids in the dough to create the CO2 gas, which also helps create all the airy pockets and helps the dough in turn rise. Now we're going to jump into our third lab of the day, which is tea. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is get a teapot or anything that can hold it. And we're going to want to put our honey, our lemon juice, our ginger, and our cinnamon into there. While you let your water boil in the background, you can go ahead and mix these together a little bit just to even things out. Then we can pour all of our boiling water in slowly, and then stir this until all the honey is dissolved and you can't feel any sticky substance on the very bottom of it. You should cover up your tea now and let it steep for about 5 minutes before it's ready to pour in. If you didn't ground up your ingredients fine enough, you may have to strain it out a little bit before you pour it so that you don't get some ginger and some cinnamon in your drink. Other than that, enjoy. Tea gets its flavor from oxidation, which is a process in where compounds from the tea leaf and the juices react with the oxygen in the air and cause it to release different flavors. This oxidation then leads to a chain of reactions in which theaflavins are produced, which contribute to the color of the tea. The hotter your water is, the more enzymes and polyphenols will be let out from the tea, which leads to more flavor for you. We're going to jump into our next one a little bit quicker now. It's the pie crust. So the first thing we're going to want to do is process our 1.5 cups of flour at first, and then our salt and sugar. We can then slowly add some of our butter and shortening, and then start to mix this all together, and then slowly start to add in a little bit of our flour left over. And then from here, we want to just process this all together slightly and have it just clumpy like shown in the video. Once it's mixed enough that there is no visible flour showing, you can add in the vodka and the water. You will begin to see that the water and the flour begin to combine and form different gluten chains, which will affect the stretchiness of the dough. So we can set aside our previous dough now and start on our apple filling. So here we're going to want to combine all of our sugars and flours and spices and then set those aside. We can take our apples that we cut up and toss them with lemon juice and then add the sugar mixture to them and then coat them up. You may want to cover the edges of the pan with some tin foil, but then you can throw it in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 minutes before you take off the foil and then throw it back in for about 20 to 25 minutes. Looking at the chemistry of the pie crust now, when you form these together, they go through different phase changes, those being the butter and the water. The butter turns from a solid to a liquid, and the water turns from a liquid to the gas. The fat from the butter begins a process of these binding proteins, and this helps form the flaky and airy mixture of the crust. The flour layers bring pockets to the crust and then coat the pockets. My pie crust was not as flaky and did not rise as much as I would have liked it to. This was because the butter was a little bit warmer and was not fully chilled before I had originally used it in the batter. This allowed it to become more emulsified within the batter. Now we'll jump into our last experiment, which is our ice cream. So the first thing you're going to want to do here is take your small bag, which is usually a sandwich bag, and place your sugar, half and half, and vanilla extract in there, and then seal it up and put it in the fridge for later. Then for one bag, you want to take it and add your 4 cups of ice to it, and then add 1/2 cup of table salt to it as well. With the other bag, you just want to put ice and no salt in it. From here on, you want to get a towel or something and then shake the bag up for about 5 minutes, and then you'll have ice cream at the very end. Jumping into a little bit of chemistry now, the ice crystals determine the consistency of the ice cream. If they are bigger, it means the ice cream will be a lot crunchier. So that was my quick lesson about all these different labs. I just wanted to say thank you all for watching and have a good day.